What if I told you Hollywood has spent decades trying to recapture ghosts? Behind every casting call and rebooted franchise lies a silent confession. They're still chasing the originals. The charisma they couldn't replicate, the defiance they couldn't tame, the elegance they couldn't manufacture. From smoky sound stages to studio backlots, executives and agents have tried desperately to mold the next Bogart, the next Bacall, the next Brando. But no matter how sharp the tuxedo or how sultry the gaze, something's always missing. Because these weren't just stars, they were archetypes, unrepeatable, irreplaceable. Tonight, we peel back the velvet curtain not to reveal a scandal or a cover-up, but something far more haunting: absence. The absence that follows when a singular presence vanishes, the hollow echo left behind when the mold breaks and history quietly refuses to duplicate it. You've heard the names, you've seen the posters, but have you ever asked why no one has ever truly taken their place? These are the 20 stars Hollywood could never replace, not because it didn't try, but because some flames, once extinguished, refused to reignite. Which icon do you think left the biggest void? Let's begin. Fact: did Humphrey Bogart. He wasn't tall. He wasn't classically handsome. But when Humphrey Bogart lit a cigarette on screen, entire audiences leaned forward. He didn't act, he exhaled cynicism. He didn't chase the spotlight, it found him in shadow. Bogart became the blueprint for the hardened, emotionally unreachable man, a man torn between honor and survival. Rick Blaine in Casablanca wasn't just a character, he was a philosophy, a reluctance to care, crumbling under the weight of real love. For decades, Hollywood has tried to cast new Ricks, cool loners with buried hearts, but the replacements always feel constructed. You can't direct lived-in weariness. You can't teach that kind of stillness, the kind that makes a room fall silent without a single movement. Bogart was war, whiskey, and weary wisdom all stitched into a trench coat. They've tried to bring him back, they've dressed men in fedoras, they've poured gravel into voices, but the ghost remains untouched. Was Bogart an actor? Or a warning that some roles are only played once? Fact 2. Lauren Bacall. She was 19 when she leaned against that doorway and told the world how to whistle. The voice, low, smoky, unafraid, wasn't just seductive, it was revolutionary. Hollywood didn't know what to do with a woman who didn't blink first. Lauren Bacall was not the girl next door. She was the woman who saw through you and let you know she did. She brought a masculine stillness to the screen, a kind of power that didn't need to shout. In an era when actresses fluttered, Bacall stared, and we blinked. Studios tried to replicate her magic. They searched for women with that look, that posture, that voice. But no one else had the contradiction Bacall wore like perfume, youthful yet ancient. Soft lips, hard eyes, tenderness, with a trigger. She wasn't molded. She walked into Hollywood like someone who already knew the ending. How do you replace someone who never followed the script to begin with? Fact #3. James Dean. He only made 3 films. Yet 60 years later, teenagers still dress like him, still quote him, still feel like he understands. James Dean wasn't playing the rebel without a cause. He was the cause. The lost boy, the wounded masculinity, the desperate search for something to believe in. He didn't act his roles. He bled them. Hollywood has launched countless next Deans. Troubled heartthrobs, brooding outsiders, tousled hair and leather jackets. But all of them seem like echoes. Dean was the original frequency. He lived fast. He didn't just crash a car, he exploded into myth. And that myth lingers not because of how he died, but because of what he revealed. That pain, when worn with beauty, becomes irresistible. That confusion, when genuine, becomes truth. Dean was a mirror for every boy who didn't know how to be a man. And maybe that's why no one can take his place, because no one has figured out the question he was asking. Fact #4. Katharine Hepburn. She spoke fast. She walked faster. And when the studios begged her to be softer, she wore trousers to the set and laughed in their faces. Katharine Hepburn didn't bend to Hollywood. Hollywood bent around her. In an industry built on controlling female images, how they smiled, how they moved, even how they breathed, Hepburn was untamed. She wasn't rebellious for show. She simply refused to apologize for existing. Witty, sharp, fiercely private, she tore through genres with surgical precision. Screwball comedy, historical drama, Shakespeare, each time she delivered a version of womanhood no one else could touch. Intelligent, unsentimental, and breathtakingly human. Actresses have tried to replicate her fire. They've delivered speeches in clipped, confident tones. They've studied her gait, her defiance, her calculated vulnerability, but it always feels like performance. Hepburn wasn't playing strong. She was strong, and perhaps that's why she remains irreplaceable, because every woman after her was still told to smile first. Fact: Marlon Brando. Before Brando, acting was technique. After Brando, it was blood. He mumbled, he scratched, he interrupted lines, he made silence louder than dialogue. To watch him on screen was to feel someone refusing to be controlled, not by the script, the camera, or even himself. Marlon Brando didn't just change acting, he obliterated the rulebook. A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, The Godfather, each role was a storm, a warning, a revelation. Many have mimicked his approach method, actors drowning in pain, losing themselves for the role. But none have Brando's raw gravitational pull. He wasn't unpredictable to impress. He was unpredictable because he wasn't acting, and Hollywood never fully recovered. They still want their next Brando. But charisma that dangerous doesn't come twice. Was Brando the future or the only one who could survive it? Fact 6. Ingrid Bergman. She wasn't scandal-proof. She was scandal-made. And yet, her radiance never dimmed. Ingrid Bergman carried a contradiction Hollywood couldn't replicate. Ethereal and earthy, angelic but achingly real. Whether in Casablanca or Gaslight, she never shouted for attention, she absorbed it. She was the rare actress whose silence said more than monologues. A tilt of the head, a breath held too long. You didn't watch her, you leaned into her. When her affair with director Roberto Rossellini exploded into headlines, America turned on her, Congress denounced her, studios blacklisted her. But she didn't beg forgiveness. She went to Europe and made masterpieces. And when she returned years later to accept her second Oscar, she did it on her terms, dignified, distant, undiminished. Actresses have been trained to copy her grace, her restraint, her luminosity. But no one has her soul, because Ingrid Bergman didn't glow. She burned, quietly, permanently. Fact 7. Cary Grant. He was elegance without arrogance, suave without sleaze. Funny without trying. Cary Grant didn't play characters. He played possibility of what a man could be if he moved with grace, dressed with precision, and never lost control. In comedies, he danced through chaos with unbothered charm. In thrillers, he turned suspicion into seduction. And always, he smiled like he knew something you didn't. He became the definitive leading man. Not because he was perfect, but because he made imperfection look sophisticated. The accent, the tailoring, the timing, it was alchemy, and it worked every time. Since then, studios have paraded smooth-talking actors in designer suits, but charm like his can't be styled. It's not just about appearance, it's about air, and no one else breathes like Cary Grant. Maybe that's why every Bond, every Bachelor, every tuxedoed hero since feels just a little less magic. Fact #8. Audrey Hepburn. She didn't arrive in Hollywood like a star. She drifted in like a dream. Audrey Hepburn wasn't loud. She wasn't voluptuous. She didn't command the room, but she owned it by simply existing inside it. In a town obsessed with curves and red lips, Audrey offered something else. Presence without pressure. She moved like she heard a quieter music, and the world followed her rhythm. Her eyes held vulnerability like glass holds light, clear, delicate, dangerous. And when she smiled, it wasn't for attention, it was for you. Just you. Hollywood tried to recreate her. Elfin beauty, little black dresses, big eyes. But every copy missed the point. Audrey wasn't a fashion icon. She was an emotion wrapped in silk, and some emotions don't happen twice. Fact #9. Paul Newman. He was handsome, yes, devastatingly so. But the eyes, icy, wounded, endlessly knowing, made you forget the face. Paul Newman embodied the paradox of American masculinity. Confident, but haunted. Kind, but closed, always running, even when standing still. In Cool Hand Luke, the hustler, HUD, he gave us men who didn't cry out, but unraveled quietly. His rage wasn't violent, it was lonely, and it lingered long after the credits rolled. What made Newman irreplaceable wasn't his beauty, but his decency. In a world that glorified excess, he gave away his profits to charity, stayed married to Joanne Woodward, and lived like he didn't believe his own myth. Actors today can imitate his looks, they can study his restraint, but they can't reproduce his soul, because Paul Newman didn't act like a good man, he was one. Fact número 10. Elizabeth Taylor. She wasn't just a star, she was an empire wrapped in violet eyes. Elizabeth Taylor walked into Hollywood at 10 and never walked out. She grew up on screen, but never shrank under its glare. She married 8 times, won 2 Oscars, survived near-death illnesses, and still managed to look immortal. But her power wasn't just in scandal or beauty, it was in duality. The fragility of a porcelain doll paired with the ferocity of a queen. She could make Cleopatra believable, and Butterfield 8 dangerous. No actress before or since has embodied both seduction and sovereignty with such seamlessness. Others have tried. They've mimicked the jewels, the drama, the arched brow, but none command presence the way Taylor inhabited it. Because for her, glamour wasn't decoration. It was war paint, and no one has ever gone to battle like Elizabeth. Fact. Anized. Steve McQueen. He didn't smile much. He didn't explain himself. He didn't need to. Steve McQueen was the blueprint for cool. Not the try-hard, scripted kind, but the kind that walks into a room and says nothing and still owns it. Whether on a motorcycle in The Great Escape or behind sunglasses in Bullet, McQueen projected silence as strength. He wasn't untouchable. He just didn't ask to be understood. Studios have been chasing that vibe ever since. The quiet rebel, the modern cowboy, the man who breaks rules just by breathing. But the harder they chase, the more obvious it becomes. McQueen wasn't acting. He had demons. And he let them show in flashes, in flinches, in the pause before a line. That's what made him magnetic. You didn't watch Steve McQueen, you studied him, and every frame since has been trying to figure out what exactly he was thinking. Fact, Doideg, Marilyn Monroe. She wasn't the dumb blonde, she was the invention of it. Marilyn Monroe didn't stumble into fame, she crafted it. Every wiggle, every breathy word, every glance beneath lowered lashes was rehearsed to perfection. And yet, the sadness was always there. She was luminous, but never light. Playful, but never truly free. Hollywood has spent decades casting women to fill her heels, curvy, blonde, sexy, naive. But they've all missed the paradox. Marilyn wasn't fantasy. She was tragedy dressed in sequins. She laughed on command, sang on cue, and hit a crumbling psyche beneath studio spotlights. She was adored by presidents and abused by producers. She was everywhere and never really there. Every time someone tries to be Marilyn, it becomes painfully clear they understand the pose, but not the pain. Because Monroe wasn't a persona, she was a cry for help that the world clapped for. Fact Hasson 3, Grace Kelly. She looked like royalty long before the crown. Grace Kelly didn't act, she glided. Across ballrooms, across screens, across genres. With every movement, she distilled a kind of aristocratic stillness that didn't beg for attention, it demanded reverence. In Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, high society. She brought elegance without distance, sensuality without scandal. She was icy, yes, but it was the kind of ice that hid fire beneath, controlled, composed, lethal. Hollywood has tried to resurrect that image countless times, elegant blondes with poised cheekbones and perfect posture. But none have her contradiction. She was untouchable, yet you still ached to reach her. And then she left, to become a real princess. As if even Hollywood wasn't grand enough to contain her. How do you replace someone who walked out of the frame and into myth? Fact Liaison 4. Sidney Poitier. Before him, there was a line. Black actors stayed behind it. Sidney Poitier didn't just cross it, he made Hollywood move it. In the 1,950 seconds and 60 seconds, Poitier didn't accept roles. He conquered them. He was dignified without compromise, powerful without aggression. In Lilies of the Field, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? In the heat of the night, he held the screen like he was reclaiming it. He wasn't just acting. He was dismantling the rules, one line of dialogue at a time. Hollywood has praised many since for breaking barriers, but Poitier was the barrier and the battering ram. And still, he carried himself with grace that made his anger feel like justice. No one since has matched that balance, revolutionary presence with classical restraint. Because Poitier didn't just act with pride, he rewrote what pride looked like. Fact Hasson 5. Rita Hayworth. She was the fantasy of a generation and the prison of her own reflection. Rita Hayworth could flick her hair and stop time. In Gilda, she didn't just sing and strip off gloves, she declared that power could wear a smile. But beneath the technicolor, shimmer was a woman carefully erased. Born Margarita Cancino, she was reshaped by the studio. Skin lightened, hairline raised, accent polished away. Hollywood didn't just love her, they reconstructed her. And she let them. Because that was the only way in. But Rita knew the cost. They go to bed with Gilda, she once said, but they wake up with me. That line wasn't bitter, it was true. She wasn't just typecast, she was trapped in the celluloid version of herself. Actresses have tried to channel her allure. The slow turn, the half smile, the illusion of control. But none have matched the sadness she carried like perfume, because Rita Hayworth wasn't just a symbol of desire. She was a woman edited by the machine, then left behind by it. Fact Hashanix, Jack Nicholson. He didn't just enter a scene, he invaded it. Jack Nicholson wasn't about charm or polish. He was chaos wearing a grin. In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Chinatown, The Shining, he tore through the screen with an unpredictability that wasn't just thrilling, it was threatening. Directors didn't control Nicholson, they unleashed him. Hollywood has long craved the wild genius archetype actors who can electrify a room with madness beneath the surface. But with Jack, it wasn't surface. The madness was the method, and the audience, helpless. His eyebrows alone had more menace than most villains. His laugh, part seduction, part warning, echoes in cinema like a curse you're not sure you want to break. Others have tried to imitate the energy, but no one has embodied that blend of intellect, rebellion, and danger quite like him. Because Nicholson didn't just act unhinged, he made you wonder if the camera ever caught him acting at all. Fact Hasson 7, Sean Connery. Before him, Bond was a concept. After him, Bond became a standard. Sean Connery didn't play James Bond. He defined masculinity for an entire generation. The voice thick as smoke, the walk part panther, part monarch, the presence undeniable. He brought danger in a tuxedo, elegance with a clenched jaw. He was brutal, yet refined, sexy, yet unreachable. And unlike the actors who followed, he didn't seem to care if you liked him. That's what made you trust him. Many Bonds came after. Some were slicker, some more faithful to the novels, but none carried Connery's contradiction, polished predator. You feared him, even as you admired him. You envied him, even as you suspected he'd leave you behind. The world changed. Bond changed. But Connery remained the original myth, because he didn't just play the role, he made the world believe it needed him to. Fact cancelletunuto, Debbie Reynolds. She danced like joy personified, but behind the curtain, she held a studio system on her back. Debbie Reynolds wasn't just the girl in Singin' in the Rain. She was the heartbeat of mid-century optimism, infectious smile, indestructible energy, a voice that sparkled even when the scripts didn't. She made musicals look effortless even when they weren't. At 19, she danced next to Gene Kelly, who famously rehearsed her until her feet bled. She didn't complain. She delivered. But Debbie was more than a performer. She was a survivor, betrayed by husbands, chased by bankruptcy, haunted by loss. And still she smiled. For the camera, for the audience, for the generation that needed to believe everything could turn out okay. Many have tried to replicate her sunshine, but none have hidden a storm so gracefully. Because Reynolds didn't just represent the golden age, she kept it alive long after the lights dimmed. Fact 19. Tony Curtis. He was flash and finesse. A working-class kid with movie star bone structure and the charm of someone who knew how to use it. Tony Curtis brought glamour into Reach. In Some Like It Hot, Spartacus, Sweet Smell of Success, he shape-shifted between clown and conqueror, lover and liar, always electric, always a little dangerous. Hollywood liked to box him in as pretty. He broke that box with timing sharper than razors and instincts that outpaced his scripts. He could go toe-to-toe with Marilyn Monroe, Cary Grant, Sidney Poitier, and never fade beside them. After Curtis, studios tried to manufacture handsome rebels with quick wit and quicker smiles, but none captured his underdog glitter, the sense that beneath the swagger was someone who'd crawled through the dirt to earn it. He wasn't royalty, he was royalty in disguise. And that mix of street grit and champagne sparkle hasn't stepped onto a soundstage since. Fact #20. Peter O'Toole. He didn't just play kings. He wore ruin like a crown. Peter O'Toole's performance in Lawrence of Arabia wasn't acting, it was prophecy. Every frame was filled with longing, madness, genius, and ache. You didn't just watch him, you surrendered. He had the bearing of nobility and the eyes of a man who'd seen too much. His voice rang with poetry. His movements whispered collapse. He was contradiction incarnate, grand and broken, luminous and lost. Hollywood adored him and feared him because he couldn't be shaped. He drank, disappeared, re-emerged. A ghost in formal wear, a lion in exile. Actors have tried to recapture that kind of haunted majesty, but they always look like they're trying. O'Toole simply was, because some stars don't burn out. They burn through you and leave smoke in every scene they ever touched. Bonus fact, Montgomery Clift. He didn't dominate the room, he dissolved inside it. Montgomery Clift wasn't the loudest actor of his time, he was the most vulnerable. In A Place in the Sun, From Here to Eternity, The Heiress. He didn't perform emotion, he endured it. On screen, in silence. Before Brando, before Dean, there was Clift. He whispered what others shouted. Where most actors postured, Clift trembled with restraint, with shame, with unbearable longing. He was beautiful, but in a way that made you ache. Not because he was unreachable, but because he seemed to want to disappear, even as you watched him. A car accident shattered his face and deepened the tragedy. But it wasn't the scars that made him unforgettable. It was the way he kept showing up, broken but present, letting the cracks become the performance. Hollywood didn't know what to do with that kind of honesty, and so it let him fade. Actors still cite him, but none carry his fragility as strength, his ache without performance, because Montgomery Clift didn't act like he was breaking. He invited you to watch him fall apart and never asked for applause. Hollywood is built on reinvention, on finding the next heartthrob, the next siren, the next icon. But maybe that's the truth we keep forgetting. Some stars don't pass the torch. They extinguish it when they leave. The screen still flickers. The scripts keep coming. But those rare presences, those irreplaceable souls, they don't just vanish. They haunt the frame, silently, permanently. So we ask you, which of these legends left the deepest absence? And is there anyone today who truly carries even a fragment of what they were? Let us know in the comment. And if these stories moved, you share them, remember them, because some stars aren't just part of history, they are the reason it still matters.